So this is the Committee of Council meeting on Monday, June 21st. It's a little bit delayed due to our special meeting of council running about 20 minutes late before. So due to COVID-19, we'll be streaming this via Facebook, but those that wish to ask questions or to join can email Paul Nopper, which is pnopper@townofstandrews.ca. So I note that all members of council are in attendance, so thank you very much, council. Before we approve the agenda, I just wanted to recognize that today is National Indigenous Peoples Day. I do note that Deputy Mayor Akaji is wearing orange, and I think it's important to note that it's of significance every year, but I think it's even more in Canadians' eyes the importance of having this day. So on behalf of all of us, Deputy Mayor Akaji, we're delighted that you're here and also representing us in that community. So thank you for all that you do for the town and for the Indigenous community. At this point, we'll look to approve the agenda. I'll look for someone to move. I see Councillor Neal. Thank you, Councillor Neal. Seconder. Councillor Keenan, thank you very much. Any changes, additions, alterations to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody. We're now in disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there any conflicts anyone would like to declare at this time? Seeing none, thank you. There's no presentations, as we've already done two this evening, and no correspondence. So before we get into the motions, this is just a reminder to everybody, as it is our first committee meeting. The purpose of tonight's meeting is not to debate the motions. We debate the motions part of the regular meeting. This is just to draw up the wording for that. We have the wording before us, but sometimes we make changes, and sometimes we ask staff some clarifying questions to let us know if it's something that we're ready to go ahead with. So there is an opportunity to knock something off the agenda. As well, it's important to note that even though that might not be on the agenda, this meeting is also good if you want to bring a motion forward. So when we look at the motion, it's just to check the wording and make sure we're ready to bring it to the regular meeting. So with that being said, we will move into them, and I'll stick for finance and administration. I'll ask once again, Deputy Mayor Akaji, if she would like to do the motion.
Certainly, Mayor, and thank you for your great introduction. So the first one is FA 210608, and it's the St. Andrews Yacht Club floating dock lease renewal. The background is the town of St. Andrews and the St. Andrews Yacht Club are set to renew the lease agreement for the docking system attached to the Market Wharf. This agreement is for a period of 5 years with a renewable clause for an additional 3 years. Provided is a copy of the lease being proposed for renewal, and both parties are in agreement with the contents of the agreement. Therefore, the motion will be that council approves the lease agreement for the docking system to the Market Wharf from the St. Andrews Yacht Club for June 2021.
Any changes to that motion, or is that one good to bring forward?
I think it's fit to be forward.
No concerns? Okay, looks like we will be bringing that forward for next week for formal debate. At this point, we're going to switch to recreation and community service. I will pick on Councillor Gumashell for that one. Oh, sorry, I skipped over. I skipped over. Did we want to talk about the Canada Day, Mr. Spear?
Can, Your Worship? Certainly. So, Council, as you're aware, because of COVID, we're still unsure of what we're going to be doing about Canada Day this year. Well, let me rephrase that. We know what we're doing, but it's a scaled down version of Canada Day with the Chamber, Kingsbury, and the town going together on the scavenger hunt, explore St. Andrews, and maybe the mayor can talk about a little bit about that after the fact. But what we're really looking for is the okay from council, because we still have a budget within that we're hoping to be able to Celebrate Canada Day back in the fall when we put together the budget, that we'd like to do an alternative celebration towards the end of August. So right now, we talked internally and then talked with a couple of our community partners, and we're looking at August 28th as a date to hold an alternate celebrations to Canada Day. Not exactly sure what we're going to brand it or anything, but we'd like to do something that's I don't know. I guess it'd be nice to think it's up to the scale of Canada Day. It probably won't be quite to that scale, but we'd like to make it an all-day event to encourage people within the region and the province to come visit St. Andrews for the day and partake in the celebrations. And there should be music and hopefully the fireworks at night. And we've even gone to ask the firemen if they're able to do the community breakfast if this goes ahead. So the chief said he'd bring that up at their meeting that's coming up the next week or two to make sure. But basically, we're hoping to shift the Canada Day celebrations from the first of the summer to the end of the summer. Probably not all the events that we typically do would be included, but we certainly hope to have a day-long worth of events to try to bring the community back, and if nothing else, to celebrate that we're back in the green phase. So we're really, sorry, Your Worship, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So it gives us 2 more months to hopefully, up the vaccination rate and get back to green, where we can all gather again safely. Because even as a municipality, we do have an obligation to make sure that we're doing everything to provide distancing. So the hopes of doing it at the end of August is kind of this, before kids go back to school, celebrate another hopefully successful peak season, although September and October are lovely times to visit St. Andrews as well. But a peak, the end of peak season for what's hopefully another successful year for our businesses. So just wanted to touch base with all of council to see if that's everybody's desire. I think the community is really looking forward to getting together and celebrating as soon as we can. So it'll give us a date to really circle on the maps. And the other thing to add to that is I think I'll be, with your support, looking to do the community volunteer awards that day as well, just to give another activity. So we could really build up a day at the end of August for the whole community to enjoy, again, before school gets back into the kids.
Question?
Yes, absolutely, Deputy Mayor.
Will there be like a committee struck up for the activities, or will it be under the BIA and the chamber?
It's a good question. Right now, I know that Mr. Spear has reached out to both the BIA and the chamber just to make them aware of the date. And in the past, we have had almost a consultant, Mrs. Bevington, has helped us with activation in the past. So a little bit to be determined. The next step for us would be to see if the BIA and the chamber have a budget or have any desire to help elevate the marketing of it and all that stuff. So more to come. There is potential, but generally speaking, you get those key players involved and they come up with a brainstorm of ideas, and the town will be definitely part of that. And I know that Mr. Spear has already been very engaged in communicating with them.
Thank you.
Mr. Heenan or Councillor Heenan.
Just a quick note, Mr. Spear, I believe you told us in one of our meetings that there is a budget that's been allotted for like Canada Day. Was it done? And I have the budget sheets. I just know you know the answer right off the top of your head. Is there an amount of money budgeted for a Canada Day celebration this year?
Yeah, so there's 15,000 within our own budget. Then the clerk, senior administrator, also was able to get $5,000 from I think it's Celebrate Canada Fund so up to 20. And there was some late season fundraising, so we could probably have a budget between $20,000 and $25,000 if we wanted to this year, and that's not excluding if other partners come in. So again, we're just getting your permission to take our resources and to start planning this, because Canada Day we used to plan over 6 or 7 months, so we've got probably about 2 to put this one together. So
Yeah,
but we'll see what we can do. I hear the
Thank
Rolling
you.
Stones are back on tour this winter, so we'll see what they're up to.
thank you, Mr. Spear.
You're welcome, Councillor Heenan.
All right, any other questions on that? Otherwise, we will jump into the motions again. Okay, thank you, Mr. Spear. Councillor Gumashell, you want to read the motion?
Thank you, Worship. Reference number RCS 210606, June 16, 2021. And the subject is event proposal for the St. Andrews Beer Fest and Burger Week. And the background reads, the town of St. Andrews has been approached by local restaurateurs, Paddle Fest organizers, and craft beer companies to develop the first annual Burger Week and Craft Beer Festival the week of September 22nd to 26th, 2021. Provided is a staff report and a copy of the event proposal. The organizers are asking for the use of Centennial Park on the afternoon of Friday, September 24th, and event day, Saturday, September 25th, 2021. And the motion reads, the council approves the use of Centennial Park for Friday, September 24th, and Saturday, September 25th, 2021, for a local craft beer festival under terms and conditions established by the Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you. Any concerns on that one? Seeing none, so we will bring that forward as well, Mr. Knopper. Jumping in, I guess we're switching now. That would end it for that one, I believe. Yeah, so we're jumping into planning and economic development. I'll pass it over to Councillor Blanchard.
All right, thank you, Worship. So for that one, PED 210603, the bylaw 2103, being the Community Planning and Development Services Fees bylaw for the town of St. Andrews, first reading. So the background, the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission is proposing changes to the fee structure under section 127 of the Community Planning Act. Provided with this report is a staff report from Alexander Gopin, senior planner, regarding the changes in fee structure. Please consult Schedule A of Bylaw 21-03 for a full breakdown of services and fees associated. The motion, first motion, that council grants leave for first reading of Bylaw 21-03, being the Community Planning and Development Service Fees bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. And shall I read the second motion, Your Worship?
Yeah, let's read them both and we'll discuss them.
Okay, all right. Second motion is that council sets the date of Monday, July 26, 2021 at 6:15 p.m. via electronic meeting for a public hearing of objections on Bylaw 21-03, being the Community Planning and Development Service Fees bylaw for the town of St. Andrews.
Thank you. I know Mr. Gopin's on here. It was just about lowering one of the fees that was $1,000 for basically terms and conditions to $250, which puts us in line with other communities in the region. Is that correct, Mr. Gopin?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. I don't know how that fee got set at $1,000, but $1,000 is what you charge for rezoning, and that's, as you know, quite a bit of work, both for yourself and for me. And the terms and conditions is much less work for everybody. It's basically the same as a variance, and that's $250. And one reason why this is happening now is that in the previous zoning bylaw, there were very few, we call them conditional uses. Those are uses that require terms and conditions. And it really didn't come up very much, but with Z21, there are now terms and conditions required for front and flankage yard fences over 1 meter. We've already had several inquiries about that. So I think we'll see a lot more of those applications, and therefore lowering the fee is just going to be a lot more palatable for the public for such a, I think, a fairly straightforward administrative task.
Perfect. Thank you for that, just for the background for everybody. So is there any concerns over that, or we'll be bringing it forward next week, or 2 weeks, I should say? Okay, that one's good. Sorry,
Your Worship, just one question to Mr. Gopin. Does this need a obtaining visa PRAC as well?
Yes, it does.
So, Your Worship, there will be one more motion that'll need to go here, which will be obtaining visa PRAC.
That's a good catch, Mr. Knopper. So we'll have that added in for the next regular meeting. Okay, Councillor Blanchard, I'll get you to go to the next one.
Sure. Reference number PED 210602. This is rules and procedures for PAC and council appointment of members. Background: with the new bylaw 21-02, a bylaw to establish a planning advisory committee for the town of St. Andrews. Rules and procedures need to be established for the operation of meetings, collection of information, and appointment of members to the PAC. Provided with this motion are copies of draft rules and regulations for PAC, appointment of members, and rules and regulations for staff. Under the Community Planning Act, the PAC has to approve its own rules and procedures. This motion is to give council input on the final draft of the document. And the motion reads that council recommends the rules and procedures for the St. Andrews Planning Advisory Committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blanchard. Just for staff, these are very similar to what we had pre-PRAC. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
And it's also what, just as per the motion, it's, we don't set them, PRAC or PAC sets them. We're just recommending the final version of the draft. So these aren't locked in stone either way. They'll have an opportunity to critique them. And even the chairperson of the PAC themselves appoint that person or elect that person. So nonetheless, I think this is ready to bring forward unless someone has any concerns, because we want to begin that process as soon as possible. Seeing no concern. So
Your worship.
Yep.
Sorry, just there's something I noticed, my fault. If council jumps to page 39 of 92, there's actually two documents that have to be approved there. So we're going to have to add a motion. There's the one that recommends the rules and procedures for the St. Andrews Planning Advisory Committee, which is their own internal documentations. But we're also having a document that concerns a policy concerning the appointment of PAC members by council. So there are actually two separate documents that council's going to have to approve. So you'll see an additional motion added to that.
Perfect. That works for us as well. All right, we'll go to the next one.
All right, reference number PED 210606. Subject is multi-residential unit 48 Augustus Street. The background for that one, Dominic Berlanger, a property owner and developer in the town of St. Andrews, is proposing to build a 3-story apartment building at 48 Augustus Street in St. Andrews. The parcel of land is already zoned multi-residential 1, and the proposed project meets the criteria for that zone. Because of that, council does not need to go through a rezoning process. However, the proponent needs to go to the PRAC in July to get a variance for the following. 1, required frontage be reduced from 36 meters to 24 meters. 2, only 1 parking space per unit, 6 in total, instead of 1.25, which would be 8 in total. Consequently, council can still express an opinion on the project and provide it to the committee for their consideration. And the motion reads that council has the following recommendation concerning the proposed development at 48 Augusta Street.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blanchard. I do think that for the sake of it this week, we should fill in the rest of that for the regular meeting, so we don't have it as a blank. There is the report that I assume that everyone had the opportunity to read that really explains the project further. But since we do have Mr. Gopin on here, and we do have to form a motion, I think maybe a quick summary from him would be a benefit to all of council. This isn't something that carried over from the previous council. This is brand new to all of us.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. So this is basically a proposal to build a 6-unit apartment building at 48 Augustus, and it does need a few variances. Basically, in the MR1 zone, there's no limit to the number of units you can have kind of in the use section, but the frontage is what really controls it. So your frontage, if you're not familiar with that term, that's basically your front lot line between your two sidelines. So usually it's the shortest portion fronting onto the street. Usually the part with the driveway and the front door, not in every case. But the idea with that is the more apartment units you have, the more kind of space on a lot you need, which is certainly true. But given particularly the town's need for apartment units, I can't remember in my report, I know 6 units doesn't sound like a lot, but I actually crunched some numbers, and I think that would add about 3% to your rental stock, which is significant. And it's also kind of the balancing act here is yes, it is in a more densely developed area. It's not on the outskirts of town, it's right downtown. So it will inevitably have a bit more impact on the neighborhood, but because it's right downtown, it's close to MBCC, it's walkable to shops, amenities, school. So it meets a lot of the municipal plan goals, and I think it does meet the intent of the municipal plan and overall the zoning bylaw. I don't think this is going to have a huge impact on the neighborhood. 6 more residents, 6 more cars. planning best practices are moving away from requiring more than one space per unit. That's kind of a more, it's an older style of planning, and you end up with large surface parking lots. And the particular site plan here has a lot of green space on it, which is really nice for the residents, but it also means that the impact of the development will be a little bit less. So I think it's a good project for the town. And it's not entirely up to council whether it goes ahead or not. It's up to the PRAC, which will eventually be the PAC. But this type of discussion will still happen because the PAC is still not council. So I think in whenever there's we don't do this for every single variance. If it's a small dimensional variance, we wouldn't necessarily bring that to council. But for this, because it's going to be a new building right in the town plat, we definitely want to know what council's thinking about this. But my opinion is it's something that should be supported.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gopin. So the recommendation from our planners would be that we support the development on 48 Augustus Street. So I see a hand already, so I'll pass over to Councillor Blanchard.
Just a quick comment through your worship to Mr. Gopin. Appreciate the summary there. You'd mentioned on the percentage there of the rental stock. I didn't quite catch the number. What was the number? You said it would increase the rental stock in town? Just those 6 units?
Let me check my actual report just so I give you the right number. And basically what the variance is, I should also say, the variance isn't to allow the entire project. It's basically to allow the project to go from 4 to 6 units. It could be 4 units as it is. But I'll give you the percentages here. So frozen.
In your report, it says 6 units will increase the rental stock by 4%.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Akaji. So that's 6 units will increase by 4%. The extra 2 units is actually worth 1.3%. So every apartment unit, I guess, is about 0.65% of your rental stock. And the other significance of jumping from 4 to 6 units is that with a lot of the costs that go into development, it's having spoken to a lot of developers, it's at that 6 unit point that projects really become viable financially. So if the variance doesn't go ahead, I haven't discussed this with the proponent, but it's possible that the project wouldn't happen at all. I'm not sure if they would see just 4 units as being worthwhile.
Councillor Heenan.
I am 100% behind increasing our amount of rentals in the town. I just have one little concern, and I know Mr. Gopin, you mentioned that about that it's now getting down to the fact of 1 parking spot per unit. Understandably, that's correct. But you know, the big concern is going to be the parking, because some units will have 2 cars. And I'm just foreseeing that people are going to be, because of the non-winter parking, you know, et cetera. I'm not, absolutely not saying I'm not in favor of this. I just wanted to talk it out. That's all I'm saying. You know, I just wanted to make sure, your worship, that we address the people's concerns, and it is always parking.
That's a good comment. So, Mr. Gopin, when PRAC reviews this, they're allowed to put terms and conditions, add them directly on that. So to make it, they could add a term that under no circumstances is a unit to have more than 1 car. Is that something that they would have the authority to do?
They could do that. I think, yeah, I mean, there are, you know, I know in the winter there are parking spots for sale. So, I mean, the apartment owners could say, you get 1 spot with your apartment, and if you need other parking, you can't park on the street, you'll have to find another arrangement in town. So that's a condition that could be recommended to be added.
And under just on that, on Councillor Heenan's points, in our current zoning bylaw, would they be allowed to use these for short-term rentals, or would this be something that'd be restricted through that? Because
No, so the MR1 zone does not allow for short-term rentals. So these would really have to be for a long-term, over 30 days, student, family type thing.
That's good for council to know on that, simply the fact that if we're granting a variance, it is to help the housing inventory of St. Andrews. So with that being said, that wouldn't have to be a term, that would already be part of it due to our zoning bylaws. That's a good confirmation on Councillor Heen's point. I think I saw Councillor Gumichal's hand maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship. My concern isn't parking, but my concern is when looking at the Google Maps of 51 Augustus, you'll notice prior to the development there were a number of trees. These trees probably provided privacy for the backyard of the house before it was subdivided, the other property. I think that in looking at the site plan, since they need a variance, there's opportunities for reconfiguring the amenity space so that the trees, the shrubs that are shown on the site plan could continue all the way along the back side of the property and perhaps out into the front as well. So since they need a variance, perhaps we'd look at adding shrubbery and dictating, well, not dictating, but working with the developer to make sure that there was adequate trees and bushes to provide some privacy for the neighbors adjacent to this development. And I'm very much in favor of development and apartment buildings, but we also have to keep in mind that it reconfigures the visual space and the living space of the people next door. So if we have an opportunity to say, yes, you can do this, but you need to plant X number of trees of whatever species, somebody who's smarter than me could come up with all that. I think that the neighbors would also be very appreciative. Thank you, Your Worship.
That's another good point, Councillor Gummichel. So I know, like with Anchor's Landing, landscaping was part of the development agreement. I was wondering, Mr. Gopin, where landscaping or in this shrubs or trees could come into play here. Would that be a term by PRAC, or would that be part of the development agreement?
That would be, so because it's a variance and not a rezoning, there isn't actually an opportunity for a development agreement, but that's certainly a condition that PRAC can add. And I think it's a smart one. I don't know, I think they're shown on the site plan as they are now because parking lots require screening. So they may already be planning on doing it anyways, but it's something we can add as a condition and make sure they do. And we have pretty standard language for using trees to screen. So that's kind of a standard condition that we use. So certainly we can add that.
Perfect. So I'm hearing the landscaping with trees, and I'm also hearing the parking. If there's any way that they can look at the parking as part of it for PRAC. Saw a few more hands there.
Just a reminder, Your Worship, you're not supposed to be debating this stuff. And to bring it to your attention too, though, is we've asked the developer, Mr. Berlanger, to present actually before the meeting. So it'd be a good opportunity to bring all that stuff up anyway, again, with him, I guess via Zoom. But I think it's all good points, but it should be discussed maybe with him around so we can bring it up.
I'm just wondering though, if it's not better than having a blank. Perhaps maybe we are debating, but to just have a blank in the motion that we clearly say that we go to vote saying this is the terms, and we just say yes or no, we support it, versus on the fly in front of them have this again.
Okay, no, I agree. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's okay. I appreciate it. So is there any other questions? I saw quite a few hands, I think, actually. I see Councillor Neal.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. It's just a kind of a question comment, I guess. I know with the development like this, which again, we all know we desperately need. I know the developer, they mentioned in their planning report here about, sending out the letters to residents and that sort of thing. Is this the type of thing that would also sort of elicit like a public consultation? I just anticipate a lot of questions, concerns from local homeowners around that area sort of thing. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about it.
It would be public consultation, but it would be through PRAC. So we technically aren't the decision makers on this. As far as public consultation from the town, we aren't the ones that are approving it. Would that be correct, Mr. Spear or Mr. Gopin? Like, it would be, if someone wants to find out more information or be vocal, they should be attending the PRAC meeting, would be my assumption. Is that correct?
That's
Yes.
correct, your worship. And yeah, go ahead, Mr. Gopin.
Yeah, so I guess I probably went over this in the orientation we did, but there was so much information thrown at you guys that day that there's no reason anybody would remember it, even if I did say it. So when we do variances or terms and conditions, I don't think there's any other matters where we do polling letters, but we will do a mail out for properties within 100 meters of this property. And if there was a rezoning, then that would be in council's hands, and then a public hearing would definitely happen. This usually projects like this, there would have to be a rezoning involved. In this case, it was on a larger property that was fully zoned MR1, and then it was subdivided. So the other, this piece just became MR1 by default. So typically, there is a public hearing involved in a rezoning, and if there was a new apartment going in town, unless it was going on an existing MR1 property like this, then a public hearing would happen. But I think for this, the immediate impacts are really to the people within 100 meters, at least any of the potential negative impacts. I think to the broader town, the impacts are, I think, a lot more obviously positive. So it's, there will definitely be, I'm sure I'll get letters and hear about it. And I think the concerns that have already been brought up by counselors will be there too. So it's I think we'll hear those again. And I think so council is definitely thinking in the right way on it.
I think that next week, that'll be the time to debate if you have concerns over, like, to Councilor Neal's point is, we will hear about this. There's no question about it. So we'll have to weigh that out in the debate next week. Councilor Gouverchel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since the project is still in the design phase, I'm wondering if any consideration has been given to accessibility, like will the bottom floor be accessible, or will any of the building be universally accessible? Thank you, Your Worship.
So I can address that. So I know that building code requires new buildings to have a certain level of accessibility, and I'm not entirely sure what that is off the top of my head. And I know there was some question around 131 Water Street, that project, as to why that wasn't accessible. And that was because it was on an existing foundation. And so I think there were some gray areas there, but this would be a totally new build. So it would have to meet all aspects of the 2015 building code, which I think does include a certain percentage of accessible units. And there is, I can tell from the site plan that at least one of the parking spots will be an accessible parking spot.
Thank you, Xander.
Good question. Any more questions on this?
And Your Worship, and maybe I missed this if Mr. Gopin said it, but for the neighbors close by, they will get a letter from the region polling letter. And so they'll be notified and have, so it won't catch them by surprise, that they'll see it and be able to make the presentation to the PRAC at their meeting in mid-July, and to voice any concerns they may have. So this council, because of the timing of everything, isn't necessarily going to be able to do that in advance, but as part of the process, it will be done overall.
Perfect. So I think now that we've talked this through with council support, I would say that council has the following recommendation concerning the proposed development at 48 Augusta Street that we support. And Mr. Knopper, you can write it up better, but the motion be that we are in support of the recommendation from our regional planners. And however, we would like to draw attention to terms and conditions around landscaping with proper shrubs or trees for privacy of the neighbor. And as well, we would like to ensure that parking regulations will be, again, I don't know the proper term, Mr. Gopin can help you, but that we really ensure that they know that they're limited on the parking lot to one per unit. Just because, and again, you could write it the way it is, but is that the will of what I'm hearing from council?
We add in one word about accessibility into the motion, please.
Accessibility. So if we find the building code isn't getting that done, then please add that. And then we'll debate it next week. I know to Mr. Spear's point, we're flirting with that line, but I think that has a lot more substance for the next regular meeting, so we can really say yes or no. And I obviously see it both ways, and we'll debate it next week. But it's great I will say it's great to be able to discuss new housing in the town of St. Andrews, whether you're for it or against it. It's good to see the opportunity. So we'll debate it next week. So we'll move right along to keep this because we're, like I said, we're running a little behind. And Councillor Blanchard, you have a pile tonight.
Throw them right in.
All right, just have to pull it up here now. I'm digging back through, so. Oh, there we are. PED 210605, subject amendment Z21-03 to bylaw Z21-01, zoning bylaw first reading. Background. The town of St. Andrews and the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission are recommending a change to the zoning bylaw Z21-03, section 3.33, licensed premises. Under this section, property owners that hold a liquor license currently have to approach the town for an amendment to the zoning bylaw and subject to such terms and conditions as may be imposed by council. So the province of New Brunswick would issue a live entertainment license. In the opinion of staff, live entertainment licenses should fall under standing terms and conditions and not the need for the rezoning process for the purpose of having live music, a comedian, etc. This would be a text amendment to the bylaw. Provided with this motion is a copy of the draft amendment Z21-03 and a report from the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission. So the motion, first motion to be read as that council grant leave for first reading of amendment Z21-03 to bylaw Z21-01 being zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. And I could read the second motion if you'd like, your worship.
Please
Okay.
do.
Yeah. That council sets the date of Monday, July 26, 2021 at 6 p.m. through electronic meeting for a public hearing of objections to amendment Z21-03 to bylaw Z21-01 being zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. Oh, and the last motion, third motion. Oh yeah, you got a pile. That council requests and obtains the views of PRAC on amendment Z21-03 to bylaw Z21-01 being zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews.
Thank you very much. And we will just for staff, we will go back to that other motion as well, just in case you're on, Mr. Knopper. So on this one, is there any questions? Again, another change or Mr. Gopin, you will be on the call in 2 weeks anyway, will you not be?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I hope it's 2 weeks and not next week because I'm on vacation next week. But if it's in July, then I will be here. Yes.
We moved it for you. Yes.
Thank you very much. You know how much I need a vacation.
Now you have to be there.
I will be.
So you know, just to keep the moving, like if you have like questions you need right now, otherwise Mr. Gopin will be on the call in 2 weeks to answer any questions because that's when we'll be debating it. Is there any questions though right now in this motion? Okay, so we'll debate that, and again, Mr. Gopin can answer questions in 2 weeks on that one. I'm not sure, Councillor Blanchard, but maybe it's in different order for you, but PED 210405 with the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission service agreement. There's a
This will
pile of
be on-
paperwork, so maybe it's stuck in the middle.
Page 62 of 92.
Sorry, your worship, I'm just looking at my package here and I'm just, there it is. I believe, no, planning advisory committee.
Should be under
210405.
That's it, yeah.
Okay, yeah, if it's on, yeah, I've got it there, page 60. It's showing up on a slightly different page on my iPad here. That's okay. All right, so PED 210405, subject Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission service agreement for PAC 2021. Background: with the town of St. Andrews instituting bylaw 21-02, a bylaw to establish a planning advisory committee, PAC, for the town of St. Andrews, an update has to be made to the service agreement. Previously, the Service Commission provided the regional services of a planning review and adjustments committee and was outlined as such in the service agreement. With the change to PAC, this must be reflected in a new version of the service agreement, provided as a draft copy for the agreement for council review. Updates to the agreement include inspection services in accordance with the Building Code Administration Act, providing support services for the PAC, legal responsibilities and defense of lawsuits. And the motion that council approves the updated version of the Land Use Planning and Building Inspection Services Agreement with the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission for July 2021.
Perfect. Any concerns over that motion? Seeing none, so we'll add that in, Mr. Knopper. That's good to go as well. So I think that concludes the motions. Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. You had the heavy lifting this evening. Appreciate you taking us through all those. And at this point, we will jump into the review of the registers. So the first thing you'll note, Councillor Gumashell and Deputy Mayor Akaji, is they look quite a bit different than they do. We've ranked them in priorities because, just so the new council members are aware, we tended to read the same thing every single month, and some of them don't move for months. So I'm asking between council and then the actual portfolio managers, which we'll get into. I'm gonna give you all a call this week to discuss it. We will rank them up. So that way we're not every week or every month reading the exact same motion that had no change in 3 months, or the same item rather. So I'll at this point, I think I'll hand it over to Mr. Spear, if you're comfortable. I think for the essence of time, we already have put 2 hours in. If there's any way we could somehow get this done in about 30 minutes, I wouldn't want, in an ideal world, that we'll wrap it up in 30 minutes. And I know that's a big task considering a lot of these issues are new to council, but if we could focus on the priority A's for this evening. And then if any member of council has something that they see in B and C when they read the report, they want to bring it forward right now for any reason, we'll open the floor up to that. But I think just because there's so much that we're digesting right now, if Mr. Spear, you can lead us through the priority A's for tonight quickly, that would be great. And you're on mute, so it'll be very quick now.
And that's all. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm open. Okay, Your Worship, thank you for this opportunity, and I will go. The good news is the first 4 items under finance and admin have been already covered. Maybe I'll take a step back. So council, what happens with these, what we call these registers, is as new items are brought forward to the council for consideration, not all of them are going to make every meeting. So we kind of add them to these registers to keep track of all the items that are before you. You'll get information at times, but then it could sit for a few weeks or a few months. So some of these are carried forward, so some of them aren't. So all the A's, most of these are going to be addressed tonight or in a couple of weeks, but it's to let you know what is before you. There will be other stuff coming on, and stuff will be taken off as we go along for meetings. So as I said, under the finance and administration, which is part B, all of those items are actually either been approved or going for review. Actually, no, it's not. Sorry. So the financial audit we've already approved. The Yacht Club lease review and renewal. I've already seen that before you, but that's just for their attachment onto the wharf. So just quickly, we have 2 leases with the Yacht Club. One, the actual building they have is on town-owned land. So we have an agreement with that, but this lease is for their dock that's on the right-hand side if you're looking out across the Navy Island. The Heather Curling Club lease renewal. So the Heather Curling Club has an agreement with the town that's renewed annually right now. It will be brought probably in September once we have discussions with them about what they're going to be able to do for 2021, 2022. I'm not even sure. We should do 5-year lease options, but I think with COVID and stuff, they only did it once. So we will bring that to you in the fall, and we'll have discussions with them if they're comfortable in moving to a longer term lease, so we don't have to renew this every year. That's all for part under the finance admin portfolio register. Your Worship, if there's anybody that has any questions on the other items that are there.
Anything before we move to the next portfolio register? Okay, we're good to proceed, Mr. Spear.
Thank you, Your Worship. Under the Public Works, we have the Transportation Master Plan. So I'm pretty sure within your orientation binders that had a lot of paper in there. I'm pretty sure we put the Transportation Master Plan. I'm looking at Mr. Knopper. Was that part of that or no? Yes, yeah, okay. So the Transportation Master Plan was a study done by CBCL back man, I think it's going to start late 2019, about various options that can be taken with the town on how to do traffic, also how to promote active transportation and promote the safety of the town. It's going to come up sooner rather than later because we're going to be addressing things related to active transportation and the trails. And so we'll probably have a discussion, I'm guessing mid to late August on this and what we want to do about trails moving forward, because it's going to be part of the budget discussions. And so we'll get into that more then. But what we look at, that we only have one part of the $1.5 million grant that we're using this year, and that's on Cemetery Road that was approved by the previous council. And then we have to decide exactly what we want to do with the remainder. And some of that will come out of the recommendations of the Transportation Master Plan. It's a long document. If you have questions, feel free. I might even be able to convince CBCL to give another short presentation on it if council and your worship thinks it'd be helpful to reintroduce it, but I'll throw that out there. Give them a few weeks notice. We could probably arrange that. The 5-year designated highway program has been taken care of tonight, actually, and so that's already been approved. The only other one, your worship, if you don't mind, under B, I'm going to touch really quick, is the Bar Road jurisdiction, just to, so people understand. So it's what it is about specifically, council, is if you go down the Bar Road and it says you approach the beach, you're probably where it converts into gravel, and there's 2 rock retaining walls on the right and left hand side. Well, there's always been I guess a misunderstanding or disagreement between the town of St. Andrews and the province of New Brunswick, whether that's on the LSD of Shamcook, if you will, and should be their responsibility, or it's within the town of St. Andrews. Our position, ever since I've been with the town, is that where the pavement ends, so does our jurisdiction. And the reason it comes up is because we have lots of requests from people that we redo the gravel road there, degrade it to keep it up to pace. And then we'll also would be asked to plow it in the winter for the clammers. And so the town hasn't taken that over. Another concern is that due to rising tides and things, there could be significant investment in that over the next 10 to 25 years. And so as the tides go higher. And so neither one of us have really established whose it is. Prior to his passing, Minister Thompson did have some work done there to restore it, but it only lasts a year. Once the tides and stuff come, it creates the potholes and all that stuff again. So that's what that is. It's about the very end of the Bar Road before it approaches, the bar at low tide, exactly whose jurisdiction that is and who should be really taking care of it.
So just on that, Mr. Spear, my understanding is that the updated map indicates that the property lines is now indicating that they have shifted that over to our property. Is that safe to say?
Yes, so if you go in either the GONB or even the assessment, SNB assessment, and you look at the town line, it does actually include that disputed portion of the road. I can't remember if it's the Municipalities Act or another act, but town limits are supposed to only be to the ordinary high water mark. Is that correct, Xander? And so that's our jurisdiction. Of course, it's above, but it's artificial, right? Because it's a road that was put into the normal basin. So I think that's part of the issue. And I guess the thing is, from our jurisdiction, the Minister's Island is actually outside the town of St. Andrews limits. And so the primary users of the road are not within it's as Mayor Nace used to say previously, it's like the bridge to nowhere, that it's a road we'd be maintained that doesn't service the town of St. Andrews residents, so to speak. And so that's why it's always been hotly contested, but it's been contested for years and years and years. It's just not the previous council that had concerns with this. It's been the council since I've been at the town of St. Andrews.
So that's a good summary, Mr. Spear. So I guess the reason why you want to bring it forward is the previous council, we did debate whether we want to extend it because it hasn't been properly maintained. Minister's Island is an important asset. It may not be in St. Andrews, but it is an important asset to St. Andrews. But with that being said, is the provincial government has a lot more funds to look after roads than the town of St. Andrews. And this thing is currently was not on town of St. Andrews property, and inheriting it would only be basically an add-on to the taxes of the town of St. Andrews, our spending of tax dollars. So at that time, council made the decision that we did not want that land. We wanted to continue to be outside of town limits because it's just a little parcel that's just the tide comes in. And it looks like somehow, I'm not sure how it happened, it looked like without consulting with us, it is now potentially going to be our land if we don't meet. So I'm looking for direction. I'm sure staff is too, and we should be reaching out to the province of New Brunswick to at least have a conversation with them on A, how that changed without consultation with us, but B, why are we paying for the end of it now when we never did, is essentially what I'm looking for direction from. So I don't know if we need through you, Mr. Knopper, or you, Mr. Spear, I don't know if we need a motion or we just need consensus on that issue, but I'd pass it over to council at this point. And I see Councillor Heenan.
As we just mentioned, Minister's Island is a grand tourist attraction for the town, and I support it immensely. The end of that road is atrocious, really. As we all know, it's unless you have an SUV, it really, you bottom out your car. My question is, until we settle who owns it, is it a big cost to town, one, to grade it once every 2 weeks or something, just to kind of fill in some of the holes? And number two, if we do that, does that mean that we have we own it then, because we make a move to try to make it better for the tourists? Does it mean then that we are doomed, that we will own it? That's all.
Councillor Hayden, those are good comments. Generally speaking, you don't alter any road that you don't own, and when you do alter it, you might as well call it your own, because we had a similar challenge with a street in St. Andrews that was a private road that the town, I believe, because of fire access, might have altered. And it's been an ongoing challenge ever since for the municipality and for the homeowners, I might add. So I would say before we put any of our town assets on it for liability purposes as well, we need to have clear clarification. So those are really good points, but I would say before we touch anything, we want to make sure it is in fact our land.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, very much.
Any other councillors? So just getting some consensus, would councillors like for Mr. Knopf or Mr. Spear or myself or all of us to reach out to the province and have a dialogue about the big concern, to be honest, it's obviously the property, but it's also when they just added on to us without consultation. I have a problem with that as well, to be completely honest with you, especially the fact that it is something that will cost the taxpayer of St. Andrews money. If they were going to do it, they should have notified us of it, is my personal opinion. So if I could just, if you'd like us to reach out to them, could you just quickly raise your hand just so I could see consensus? Yeah, okay, so that's unanimous. So Mr. Spear, Mr. Dopper, let's reach out to the province to have a conversation with them, and then we'll circle back to council on how that conversation went, and we'll go from there. So thank you, council, for that. Sorry that was longer, but that's a good one, Mr. Spear, to add from. I know it's a B, but I think we need to get on that sooner rather than later, than let it linger.
Thank you, Worship. Under the Public Safety Portfolio Register, we bylaw enforcement backup staff. So this just comes to light. We were going to bring it forward here, but then we got into discussion about what the actual term we were going to be calling ourselves, whether it's assistant bylaw officers or acting. So what it really comes down to is that, believe it or not, our bylaw enforcement officer deserves vacation once in a while, or could be taken out to illness. And some of our bylaws are actually very specific that certain actions can be done by the bylaw enforcement officer. And so it's probably in the best interest of the town of St. Andrews to have somebody else designated as acting or assistant, just in case Mr. Clark isn't available. And so the motion would be that that either Paul and I, or both Paul and I think the term is actually acting in his absence is what we decided on, could be appointed that. And so if Mr. Clark isn't around for previous mentioned reasons, then there's someone there that can act on any issues that come up immediately and deal with them instead of having to kind of wait for his presence to do it.
I have no problem with that. Any members of council have any challenges with that? I'd like to see it because again, if you know, the worst that ever happened, he was to get ill or something, then it leaves us, you know, with basically no coverage. So I think that that's a safe backup plan. And let's hope for your two sake that you don't have to do it often. So.
Yeah. Would you be okay, your worship, if we added this to the actual
Please.
meeting in July?
Please do. Anything that we can get through as a council, we want to get through it in a hurry because we want to meet less often, but have effective meetings. So please add that so it doesn't linger.
Okay, thank you. The emergency communications agreements with the province. I won't ask him to do it, but Councillor Neil is probably better to talk about it than I am. But nonetheless, what it is that the fire system, the province of New Brunswick, the public safety, is upgrading all the mobile radio stations that the fire departments use. And currently in Charlotte County, I think there's three different. There's VHF, UHF, and some of them are on the new updated system. And it's a much better communication system in theory. You know, technically, it allows better communication between responding parties. And so it's, so for instance, as you know, with a typical walkie-talkie, if you have one, you know, everyone's on the channel at once. So the RCMP would be talking to the ambulance, would be talking to the St. Andrews Fire Department, and it can create confusion, especially if you had something large, a large event. So let's say a forest fire that has multiple agencies responding. Well, this thing has multiple channels. And so they could say, you know, St. Andrews Fire Chief talk to the St. George Fire Chief on this channel. The police services can get in. So it allows a lot more coordination there. And so public safety was providing all the equipment, or some of the equipment for it, which would get us started about half. But the problem we're having is it was tripling our communication costs. So in order to get the equipment, we had to have dispatch out of the 911 center, which is currently in St. John. And so out of St. Stephen. So St. Stephen was charging us about $7,000 a year. And I'm just trying to remember the numbers now. And I think we went up to St. John, it was going to be $21,000 or $25,000 a year for basically the same service. Now, just to explain, if we make a 911 call now from anywhere in Charlotte County, it does go to St. John anyway, but St. John currently would like call St. Stephen and say we need a fire services at 212 Water Street and give enough details. And then the dispatch office in St. Stephen would make the decision about how many, you know, stations have to be called and advise the fire chief of how many trucks, if there's, you know, individuals that are in the house or if it's empty, etc. So what this would do was that the dispatch center would actually be in St. John up at City Hall, and the agreement is actually with St. John Police Commission, is who's the service provider. It was kind of, the system in theory is good, but the way it was rolled in was it was kind of just about a year and a half ago, the province just said, well, we have the system here. Here's how much it's going to cost. Sign this agreement and it'll be done without any consultation. And the big problem was it increased the cost so much to the towns without zero. And they wouldn't even come back and say why the cost was extra. So, you know, and so they say they're giving us this equipment, but obviously they built it into their cost of providing the service. And so the last council made the decision to postpone it till they got some more answers, and St. Stephen did offer, and they are still carrying us. But I think St. Stephen's going to be unable to carry the service past the end of this year. And so it should be brought to council, maybe not for this meeting till you've had a chance to look at it, a committee meeting. We probably, in the July committee, we'll put it before you again to have a review and probably go for acceptance in August. And that we are being slowly forced into it. But the last council did fight it off for a year and a half. There has been some delays in implementation because of COVID. So the same department that's enforcing COVID regulations was also implementing this. And so I think the LSD departments, again, Councillor Neil might know better than I, aren't fully implemented. They were supposed to be a year ago within Charlotte County. And that's some departments within the LSD, so like Bonnie River and Oak Bay, Elmsville, these we're all supposed to be on this new trunk mobile system, which is what it's called officially. And I think they've still been delayed some because of COVID, but it is coming. And to the point that I think they've already installed an antenna on our roof of it, our fire hall, anticipating that we're going to accept it, that they had the equipment and started circulating it to the fire departments to get ready for the final acceptance.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. So we can bring that forward to a future meeting. The unfortunate reality is maybe Councilor Neal can correct me, there's no other option. It literally is our only option. The other thing that I know you hinted at it is it's not apples to apples. So per capita, we pay more than per person in St. Stephen and St. George. It's based on assessment value, which is another struggle. So what it costs our residents costs 2 times more than it does communities around us of our tax dollars. So it's not an equitable system. And then there's other things that are not in consideration, like the amount of summer residents we have, NBCC students, they're not counted in our calculation. So it works against us on transfer payments and it works against us on this. So I do think that we'll bring it forward. I think, obviously up for debate, but I don't think we have an alternative other than to accept it. But I do think that, I think the town already did write a letter to the minister, but I think that the town should write another letter to the minister to let them know of the huge increase in cost, but also the unfair basis in which it's charged. So we'll continue going on that unless someone has a question about it, Mr. Spear.
Or Councillor Neal wants to input or anything, like I said, as a volunteer, you may understand more technically. No? Okay.
Yeah, I don't have.
Sorry, don't mean to put you on the spot either.
That's all right, Chris. I don't have a whole lot more to add. Like you said, it's something that's coming. I mean, that's, I think, the reality of it. I agree with the financial aspects and the burden that it is putting on municipalities, small LSD departments. But the reality is, Ambulance New Brunswick has already accepted it. The RCMP is using it. All the larger fire departments have already moved to it. And as you alluded to, eventually St. Stephen is going to as well. And we're not going to have an option but to go onto it. It's more expensive for sure, but it is definitely a better radio system. And again, you did mention that at the start there about, the large incidents, that sort of thing. It does allow officers to communicate with multiple organizations. So, right now you get a lot of fire chiefs, a lot of officers carrying multiple radios, sometimes 3 radios, just so they can coordinate things between fire departments, between the Ambulance New Brunswick RCMP. And this allows you all to do it on one radio. So, but you are correct, Your Worship. The reality is it's coming, and I don't think there's a lot we can do about it.
Good news is we saved the taxpayer of St. Andrews about $30,000 by delaying it. So, but I appreciate that. I think that although that's not for next month, I think it better positions us when that motion does come along. One thing I'll add is just for staff, if you could just confirm for St. Stephen when they're planning to jump, we'll jump with them at the same time, just because there is a cost savings there for doing it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll continue. I think that was it for Public Works. Is that correct, Mr. Spear, for coverage for today?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll jump in, Public Safety. We already talked about the bylaw enforcement backup, so I'll continue. That's it for Public Safety, rather. So we're on Business, Tourism, Heritage, and Culture, which I don't think there's a lot to discuss there, really, is there?
No, we have 2 presentations coming up next month or into August that they'll talk about various initiatives they've got going on. So with vibrant communities and age-friendly community.
And not to rush you, but could that the same be said for Recreation and Community Services, that we've discussed everything that is relevant for this week?
Yeah.
All right. And now we're jumping over to Planning and Economic Development Portfolio. Again, a lot of these we brought forward, but I guess maybe
only one up. Oh,
Peter Corbin.
Yes, so we have a developer that'll be making a presentation at a regular meeting in July, that he has a proposal actually to build some units. And I think I sent you a letter on it, did I not, last week? Yeah, sorry. And so that he's already explained that out to you. So he's going to come and have an ask. There wants to be some shared costs so he can maintain them as an affordable units. And so he's also reaching out to the community. So we may have some more viewers than normal that night to have a look at that as well. But it's exciting because there's 20 additional units, housing units in various configurations that you've seen there. So spread between 2 apartments and 4 duplexes of townhouses. So he wants to make a presentation for our consideration currently along the Borough Road.
I think I speak for all of us. We look forward to that one. Anything that we can do to discuss housing, I hope this council, once we can do it to our priorities, that we do in fact make that very obvious that I spent 5 years, very limited to have multiple options on the table. We only had 1 or 2 over 5 years. So to have 2 in our first few months, it's pretty exciting to hear. So I think we all don't have to debate that one. We'd love to hear what he has to say. Is that it for registers? Oh, sorry to push you through. I'm just trying to get us on time.
Whatever you want, Your Worship. Yeah, that's really, if there's anything else there, Council, that you want a little more update on, feel free to reach out to me or Mr. Knopper, and we can update you offline about what some of those other initiatives are, just so you have a better understanding.
Perfect. And on that note, I know you all have it, but if you ever see a B or C and you want to make it an A, just send Mr. Knopper and Mr. Spear a message, and they'll make sure that if it's not an A, at least that when they do their summary like this, that we bump it up. But I'll be honest, the way that we just did that for being our first time going through it was significantly faster than what we did in the past. And that's going to save us time in these meetings. But again, I don't want to skip over things that are important to you. If there's something you see as a B or a C and you want to make sure it's discussed, just send the message and we'll make sure, because it may be a B or C priority for maybe staff or even myself, but it might be an A for you. So I want to be cognizant of that. At this point, under new business, we have the housing regulations that we're going to discuss. Would that be Mr. Gopin? Or would that be you, Mr. Spear?
Mr. Open is better, but
I'm assuming it's housing recommendations and not regulations, because if it's recommendations, then it's probably me.
Sorry, technically it would be recommendations. I know it says regulations, but it's recommendations. It's in regards to obviously the development scheme bylaw, right?
Yeah. Do you want me to speak to that, Mr. Spear, or do you want to go for it first?
no, you can go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Nope. Go ahead, Xander.
Sure. So I think there's a little bit of a teaser at the orientation that we've been working on some stuff behind the scenes. You know, we've heard about some private development projects that are going to be happening, and they're pretty exciting. And they're going to take a chunk out of the needs of town, but there's going to be continued needs for a while. So I assume this is something we'll discuss at council, so I don't want to, and I know kudos on getting through the register so quickly, so I don't want to take up very much time. But basically, town staff and myself, we've put together basically a roadmap for how the town can become an active partner in development, and towns, municipalities have a lot of leverage with the federal government in terms of getting funding for housing. As a partner, towns can really skip a lot of the steps that other nonprofits or private developers might have to go through, and can access lots of funding, as well as owning land, which can be used for in-kind contributions. So I know there's a roadmap included, and we're kind of at the point now where we're looking for council buy-in and support to basically make some applications for federal funding. There's been some initial kind of a little bit more advanced than back of the napkin engineering costs for a few different site configurations, and it's basically at the point where you could go to CMHC, apply for soft cost funding, tighten up the engineering studies, tighten up the site plans, do some public consultation, and then the service commission, the planners, we would start drafting up the actual development scheme bylaw once we have a better idea of what's going into it, in terms of we would use site plans and design criteria. Those would become schedules in the bylaw itself. So this is basically a way for there's all sorts of things that the town and council can do to encourage private developers. But it's, from the size of the problem, I think it's going to take probably a more active approach. And I think staff has been working hard to lay out what that approach is. And again, I don't, maybe I'll come with a presentation for the new business at the council meeting. I'm not sure how we'll set that up, but I don't want to go on and on tonight. I could talk a lot about housing. So I'll leave it there for now, but if you have any questions now, I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, we'll open up for questions. I will say this, that, you know, we obviously, we're scheduling our priority meetings. I know most people have already got back to Mr. Knopper, but where this ranks, I think it's safe to assume it will be a priority of ours. So I think there'd be value versus us, you know, taking 10 minutes now of actually getting a more formal presentation when you have an opportunity on exactly what that could look like. And then we would schedule that in. I know we had 2 tonight already, so, but we would schedule that in as a presentation just so we can see exactly what that looks like. But there's no question about it when it comes to applications and things with CMHC. I think I can speak for all of us on that one again, that we, as soon as we can start doing that, we want to get doing that. Like those, we don't want anything like that, a technicality to delay us. 4 years is a quick time period to make a difference. And the sooner that we can start working on that, the better. But I'll pass it over to the floor if anyone would like to add more to those comments, or contrary, of course. Councillor Heenan.
Wouldn't be anything unless I had a comment. I believe in red tape reduction. So if we can make the process easier for people who are applying or who want to do something, then I'm all for it. Because a lot of people just say, and it has been rumored always, you can't get anything done here because of the red tape. I would like to see it cut, that we can cut to the chase, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll make sure not to wear a red shirt next time you say that. Councillor Gumichel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering if any of this sort of federal funding was leveraged way back in the day, Chris, maybe before your time, when they put in the subdivision. Maybe we could look up some of the retirees and see how they were able to pull that off, and see if this sort of scheme was something that they were able to use back then, and maybe something we could repeat. Thank you, Your Worship.
Good point. I don't know, Mr. Spear, if you have an answer to that. You may not actually at this point. I'm not sure.
The only thing I'll say, Your Worship, is typically it's the funding we're looking at is for completed units development. If you remember, that phase of the subdivision was just creating roads and then selling the unit or the land off for individual dwelling units. But in my years here, I never saw anything from the federal partners specifically for housing development in Champlain subdivision.
Perfect. Thank you. Any more questions? All right, I think that will wrap that up. Thank you very much, Mr. Gopin, for joining us this evening, and especially for all the planning stuff. It was pretty heavy lifting by Councillor Blanchard, so we're appreciative that you were here to join us. Okay, jumping into the agenda, let me just double check. So yes, we're at this point, we're into question period. And once again, Mr. Knopper, was there any questions during this meeting?
Your Worship, you haven't received a question, but you do have a comment if you wish to hear it.
Sure.
Okay, it was from Mr. Kevin Simmons. He just wanted to say to Mayor and Council, I'm always proud of the support that the town continues to provide in regards to festivals and new ideas. I want to thank all of the councillors in regards to the support for the St. Andrews Craft Beer Festival and Burger Week that has the potential to become such a large event in years to come. Thank you for your vision and support.
Thank you. And just so everybody's aware, myself and Mr. Spear met with him and Luke McDonald this week to find out more, and they talk about operational plans, COVID operational plans, all that stuff. So thank you for the comment. That wraps it up, does it, Mr. Knopper, then? Perfect. So at this point, we're at Councillor and Deputy Mayor's comments. Just raise your hand if there's anything you would like to add. Perfect. So just in my closing, I know that Mr. Knopper emailed out about the council priority sessions. Please respond to them as soon as possible. There's 3 dates he wants to confirm with us. I will say this about these dates, arguably, those are probably the most important meetings, arguably, as an individual, to accomplish what you want to accomplish over your term on council. This is where you have your input to really provide the group direction on what we want to achieve over the next 4 years. So again, if you don't attend those meetings, you're going to be missing out on a fundamental document that helps guide how what we accomplish over the course of these 4 years. And just the other thing I want to say is I'll be texting you all and lining up just a quick phone call with each of you this week. I just want to touch base about the portfolios. Obviously, we went through a committee meeting now, so you got a better feeling of what's in every portfolio. So now I'd really like to send those and dedicate those out. And as well, there's just a couple other things that I want to mention individually to each of you. And at that point too, it's a temperature gauge where I'd like to get some input from you as well on things like, meeting length, the procedural bylaw, all that stuff. And I just wanted to, one more comment is just, we went through a lot of stuff tonight, guys, in just over 2.5 hours. 2 presentations, ones which was financial statements, and we had a lot of good conversations on a lot of items and set our agenda for 2 weeks from now. So thank you very much for being so engaged. 2 hours, 40 minutes. We're going to do better than that in the future, but thank you for your commitment tonight, and we'll do it all over again in a couple weeks. I'll be at this time looking for, no need to go to closed session, correct? Okay, I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn. I see Councillor Blanchard and seconded by Councillor Gumashell. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
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 And that was everybody. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, staff, as well, for everything tonight and prepping us. Everyone have a great evening.
Thank
Aye.
you. Thank you, Stan.
Have a good night.
Everyone.